All right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I apologize for the music not being audible, but I don't think y'all needed that anyway. So now, would y'all please hit a one if my voice is coming through clearly? Not just coming through, but coming through clearly. Hit a two if you, well, hell, if you can't hear anything, it's no use me asking you to hit a two. If the sound is bad, hit a two. And sorry about the music y'all couldn't hear. Then again, maybe some of you didn't want to. It's just a little intro anyway. Now, I also played the flight announcement, but I guess that didn't come through either. I probably should call my son in to read the flight announcement, but he is, mashallah, he is reading a surah, so I'm not going to interrupt that. And let me see here. He's probably also sharing some photos of his trip. So to get right to it, because I won't take too much time away from him either. We're down to the last hours of his time here with his old man. And I was going to be pissed and depressed at his departure. Now I'm sad, but I'm also somewhat relieved because apparently he has less to worry about when he does get back stateside for a while, which gives him more time to get closer to his goal. And he and another relative set up a proofreading business as well online. So if you know somebody who's terrible at writing but has an assignment that is due, then you might want to give him a buzz. And I see if I can remember how to do this. I might put a flyer up with that. Let me see if I can share that image. I should be able to. Yeah, I should be able to share an image. And a few of them, actually. Actually, you know what? Since the download is slow now that I'm live, I can't pull the images that easily. So I'll have to just put them in the community tab for those who need them. But to get right down to this, why I open this up, shouts out to the angry man. I have to admit, I was unaware, actually, that Kiki Palmer said what she said about not dating any light-skinned brothers anymore. And the angry man was on to something. But I have to also admit, I was unaware. I mean, I really just didn't know at all that she even said this. I was completely in the dark about it. Just no clue that she said something that stupid. That she felt comfortable saying something that stupid. I had heard the jokes before. I think maybe O'Shea Duke Jackson had some jokes about her dating a light-skinned man. Maybe it was not him, and I'm just remembering it wrong. Could have been. And you know what? Before I go into that any further, let me first go ahead and give shouts out to those who have backed me up. I want to give shouts out to Vaughn. You know why when you hear this. Shouts out to Armando, MLR, and Malik for coming through recently. Before them, shouts out to DJ DN3 and Samuel Jacques, Ryan, Michael J. I only got one Ryan. You know who you are. R. Campbell and Indigo Flow. I mean Blendigo for coming through. Aspire Studios and Arthur D, Mojo, K. Washington, Deshaun Dub. I want to thank you all for the support. I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. I want to thank Passport OG for his endorsements and Lion of MGTOW for his support and referring certain ideas to me. Anchorman does not know. I've spoken with him once when I called in on a live. I forgot whose panel it was. he may have heard the name, but he doesn't really know I'm doing this. And so that's not what that's not what this is about. It's not about getting recognition from him. Now, shouts out to F Holiday, Indigo, Abraxas, and Lion 17. Also, Red Falls Black for subscribing, and Andre 416 for subscribing to the first class section of Jet Black Airways, which is the Black Treon. That's up. And this live is probably only going to be available there after a while. I have to determine if that's going to interfere with the ability to make money there, because the last time I left something on YouTube for free, but I loaded it to Patreon just as a bonus, that was when it got canceled. Somebody apparently took what I said on YouTube and took offense to it and reported it to Patreon. How would they have even known otherwise? The thing that's different about Keke Palmer is really only that normally sisters in the sisterhood go straight for the stereotype. Not my stereotype, but what the white supremacist stereotype. They go for somebody that's not only acting like an idness, but is also abundantly melanated. They go for what they think massa is afraid of. And when they can't get those guys to settle down, then of course they jump completely over the light-skinned brothers and then go straight to Zaddy. In many cases, that's what they've been doing lately. Kiki's just behind. And one of the reasons is because, well, Kiki listens to her mom a lot, and her mom is from a different generation. The gynocracy generally does pass down certain things from generation to generation, but one of the things that her mother was able to pass down to her that most women did not get to pass down to the women Kiki's age was their old school preference for lighter skinned men. I don't think that Kiki actually had that preference. Now, unlike Angry Man, I think that Kiki actually preferred Zaddy to begin with. That's my suspicion. You see, she went and got with Darius. She got the baby she wanted out of Darius. She was abusive and then blamed Darius for the abuse. And I stated earlier when that came out, I said she would not have hit an abundantly melanated man the same way. That's something I know from experience. I've been there before. I've had them get comfortable swinging on me and they wouldn't do it to someone else. And I say that knowing that there's going to be some sister somewhere that hears this and says, well, maybe you need to check yourself and see why they felt comfortable doing this to you and not someone else. I've already done all that homework. It's stereotypes. That's what it is. And there were times they would feel comfortable hitting another man, but usually there were a bunch of people around that would have checked him if he had done what she deserved. In my case, they would not have minded doing it if there were only 2 or 3 around. It got them social points. I still would have been checked. But, you know, even if I managed to break away from 2 or 3 holding me back, then I just would have been all kind of punks and B-words. And she still, as far as she was concerned, she still would have been able to handle the threat because, frankly, sisters have this notion that if they can see your bruises more easily, then you actually bruise more easily. That's where the difference comes in. Shouts out to Indigo Flow for coming through on the Cash App right now. Thank you so much from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. That is quite oh, I see what you stated that it's for. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Abraxas Grant mentioned this. Slapped by 2. Now, for Abraxas to say this to women, that means that you were an adult and they were adults. And so therefore they were supposed to be beyond the age of this when they did it, but they weren't. That's what this tells us. Why did they do it? Because you were 5'7", or because they were children? More than likely, really, it was based on them being kids. And that ain't your fault. Keke Palmer is only different in terms of the direction in which he's going. Okay, when you were a teenager, I got it. Even, wait a minute, so you were slapped by 2 adult women while you were a teen. Now, see, that's really low down on their part to do that. So, Keke Palmer is different only in one regard, and that is in the direction that she's taking. Keke Palmer, ironically, she went straight for the light-skinned brother that would have been sought after in the 80s. She's doing this. I mean, here she's doing this 40 years. Well, I shouldn't say 40, more like 30 years after we went out of style. Over 3 decades after we out of style, she went and got with one. And I'm sure that was for breeding purposes. I do agree with Angry Man that she decided that she was done with him because she got what she wanted out of him. But the way she presented this was he's abusive because he's too sensitive. Now, if her preference had been someone more abundantly melanated, she would have said he was abusive because he's insensitive and doesn't care. Whatever stereotype is going to work, she will say. And it comes out that she's abusive. The other thing is I suspect that she probably was hoping that he would conceive a daughter for her and not a son, because most sisters today aren't trying to conceive a son that's ambiguous looking. They know what that's going to mean, and they generally would not prefer that. They want to conceive admixed looking or ambiguous looking daughters and unambiguous looking sons. That's generally what they go for. They're and understandably, when they're talking about what's socially easiest on the kids, I get it. Whoa, okay. Now this one here is this is too much simultaneously. That means they set up and talked about this and then did it, planned it. Now, granted, this is one incident at a party in high school. However, this still shows that despite their hatred of each other, they will arbitrarily decide that they're going to gang up to insult and diminutize somebody else because there's something that they don't want him to have. Shouts out to Passport OG for coming through on the Cash App. Thank you, sir, from the bottom of my black heart, from the depths of my black mind. Arigato gozaimasu, sensei. I really appreciate that. So they were willing to do something like this, 2 of them. Maybe they were friends, maybe not. Doesn't matter. You had 2 of them that were willing to do the same thing simultaneously. Instead of competing for you, they figured, well, you know, we can really knock them down some notches in front of everybody else if we gang up to do this against him. I'll be honest with you, though, Abraxas. If you had been 6'7", they probably would have found another reason. It's not your fault. And I'm saying that hearing your side of the story and not theirs without witnessing this. This is over 14 years ago. But based on my own experience, I could tell you, no, it's not your fault. That's the whole point. When we get struck, we're told to believe that it is our fault. It's not the case. The other thing, too, to notice is that okay, so getting back to this, Kiki Palmer still felt comfortable saying this. Both of these guys were her second choice, from what I can make out. See, otherwise, I mean, if Darius was her first choice and she still wants to be with someone, then she would have stayed with him. Unless she's not interested in men anymore because she's already bi-curious. Now, if she's full-on bi-curious and not even interested in men anymore, then it would make sense. But she said she's going to give all complexions of men a chance. So what this is that reproductively, not from her own instinct, but just from her social assessment of reproductive benefits, Darius brought the benefits. And even then, she had to know that if Darius passed on his appearance to a male in this day and age, the only value that male would have is the same one that she saw in him. So I don't think that she necessarily preferred his shade or his phenotype. I simply think she decided that, socially speaking, it will be easier on the child, especially if it's a daughter. I don't know what she's going to do to the son, since it's a son that they have. And if the son winds up looking like dad, I don't know what that's going to do, how that's going to affect the behavior, how that's going to affect the mothering. What I do know is that she felt very comfortable sitting up and saying she's dropping one for the other. And we already know that they can only say in one direction. Just like as a man, you're only allowed to say that you prefer darker skinned women. Well, I mean, hell, that's great for me. That's fine for me. But what about for men who prefer them in the middle, or who prefer them light skinned? Or what about the men who are preferred by lighter skinned women? What about them? They can't say anything like this. It's not allowed to go in that direction. It's the same thing for the women. You see, if she had ever expressed her preference for an ambiguous phenotype in writing, she would have been drugged through the mud, and she knows this. She never expressed it. She got with Darius, but she never expressed it, you see? But that's because it's not fashionable. But see, now that it's not fashionable to have a preference for lighter skinned men, she can sit up and say, now that she's leaving this man to whom she was abusive, I'm not dating lighter skinned men anymore. She's allowed to say that in writing, where she was not allowed to express a preference for him in writing. That would not have been okay. Look how they're going after Simone Biles Owens still, because she saw value in Jonathan Owens. And they listen to how many, or read how many of them have attributed his attitude to his phenotype, like it's a character trait. Oh, they sensitive. See, now, if you got green eyes and you light-skinned it, you can't even be an NFL player. You're not tough enough anymore. What they're now saying is you must not. What they're pretty much saying is if you have the caucasity to be light-skinned, green eyes, or any other phenotype, you have to not only be super tough, you have to be too stupid to see your own value. What they're pretty much saying is if a black man who is abundantly melanated sees his own value, that's bad enough. But if you are what they consider to be undermelanated and you see any value in yourself at all, well, that's unforgivable. That's blasphemy. They're not letting either one of us off the hook, but they're telling us that one is worse than the other. Gentlemen, gender-based colorism in the North American Black community, and it's not only limited to North America, by the way, is one of the reasons we have to break away from the gynocracy. We don't get to carry this sort of stuff on. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to pass down colorism to the youth. Not only that, not only are we not allowed to pass it down, we should not be. We don't want to, but we're not even allowed to pass down to younger boys an understanding of how sisters' colorism affects their behavior and how it's going to affect these sisters' behavior towards these young boys when they're young and when they're old. If you simply say to them, listen, they're colorists, they believe that melanin counts are tied to biologically tied to certain behaviors. They believe this. So young brother, you have to be ready for them to stereotype you and treat you according to their own stereotypes in their mind. If you even say that, which is the truth, you're going to be stopped and canceled. Then they're going to say, well, what else do you tell these kids when we ain't around? What else do you be doing to these babies when we ain't around? Take these babies to the hospital and to the doctor to see if this man done anything else to any of them. They're going to throw that in there because they're reaching. Because now they want a legal reason to go after you. Just because you told some young brother not to be colorist, but to understand and prepare himself for the effects of adult women with authority over his lives having colorist stereotypes in their heads and believing them. Not allowed. Now I want y'all to stop and consider that. Think about that. Everything that she said in writing and everything she did not say is based on what the gynocracy finds to be acceptable. She already was probably being clowned by some women for having a man that looks like him. She's listening to her mother from her mother's generation. She did it. But then her sisters, her peers, her colleagues are looking at her and they're saying, girl, you got with one of them soft ass niggas, light skinned, one of them light brights, sensitive. You can look at his hair and tell, because you know they'll say stuff like that. And they got on her about it. And so when she finally got what she wanted, she then gets rid of him, because now she has done what her mom said, and she can also satisfy the sisterhood. I don't know if Darius Jackson is too sensitive or not sensitive enough. How the hell would we know? We know he's not a bum per se. He's a personal trainer, but he's not a bum. She was out working. He stayed with Junior. Okay, that's what had to be done. That's how she wanted it. And you take a look at her. And you've seen photos of what she looks like when she doesn't put the makeup on, the cake up on. The thing is that she didn't do anything that took any social bravery. She didn't do or say anything in any way or form or fashion that went against the contemporary sisterhood of her own age, her peers, except that she chose Darius Jackson. That's about as far as she was willing to go against what they want. And yet you, black men, you would not be allowed to express any complexion preference except one. And to a certain extent, I know why that is. I know to what that is a reaction, but I'm not saying that's okay. I'm simply saying you're not allowed to have one. You're not allowed to say you prefer them in the middle to a certain extent. You're allowed to say you're neutral, and that's about as far as that goes. If you even so much as say, look, you know what? If you say abundantly melanated sisters don't even want me, and I'm not going to bother them like that, you're not getting away with it. No, you need to keep on trying. What they're pretty much saying is, even if for whatever reason that melanin count in women goes with not preferring you, you need to keep on trying, so you keep validating their egos. When I told you this is not just a conflict but a gender war, that's what the hell I was talking about. Now she's sitting up and saying that other brothers have a chance. Now, if she really wanted those other brothers, she would not have waited until now to give them a chance. But if she really did not want them at all, period, then she would not be giving them a chance right now. So what does this tell you? This tells you that for the most part, black men are the same to her. They just differ in different scenarios, that's all. She got the baby that her mom wanted. Now she can get the stereotypical buck Negro that her friends want, and she probably wants as well. But her preference is actually, we already know what it is. And that's why we don't need to be arguing anymore about which black men these sisters prefer. The reason why there needs to be no more argument is because we now understand what was being kept a secret from before. They actually want Zaddy. That is where their preference lies in many cases. That's what it comes down to. That myth of white womanhood and that preference for Zaddy. Ebony K. Williams, Zaddy can get it. If they can get one, he can get it. And what Alan Anderson has rightly said, that a lot of these white men that call themselves incels would not be if they were willing to give sisters a chance. And I can't say that that's not true. There was a time I would have said no, not really. And that's largely because I knew how I was being told to stand back, stay at a distance, be a nice guy, be a good friend. Even try and make approaches, but don't actually expect to be treated, don't expect to be treated equally, don't expect the equal chance of success as other brothers. I know that. And I thought, well, I mean, if I'm still a black man, I'm just light skinned, then of course a white dude don't stand a chance. And, you know, I really believed that. Sisters were so convincing, I wonder if they believed that back then. But now we understand from not only pro-black circles, but we also understand from some of these zaddies that have been clapping sisters' cheeks, that they've been clapping the militant fist in the air pro-black preaching sisters' cheeks in private, and it's a win-win. She gets what she wants with no embarrassment. He gets what he wants with no embarrassment. And with no commitment and nothing he has, it's no effort for him. He doesn't have to make an effort. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Tika Hardy. So he gets easy access without the work, without having to do anything, without having to really prove his case to her. And as long as he fucks the shuck up and doesn't tell anybody in the pro-black circles, she actually gets her fantasies fulfilled too. So that's what it is. Now we understand that a lot of the sisters with the fist in the air were actually slipping and sliding with not only no good brothers, but with Zaddy. Meanwhile, the brothers that were preaching the same thing as them couldn't get none. Not to start a family, not for any reason. Now, if we were going to say they couldn't get none because they weren't married, I would have said, okay, yeah, that's fine. But then that means that that's who you marry. But what I'm saying is they could not have gotten none under any circumstances. And that's not okay. They couldn't have married these women under any circumstances, except, of course, I'll raise your babies by another man. It's the only way these pro-black men could have gotten married. Wait until you get big and you got another man's kids, then come see me. Oh, she'd have been like, okay, sure. Now, next thing I'm going to say, because I really won't take a long time in this case. Besides, I need to go in and mess up my son's hair. Probably I should shave him bald like I am. I'm joking. I just wanted to see that look on his face. But I wanted to tell you something about Saadia the Psychologist too before I go. Saadia the Psychologist recently did an interview on Soft White Underbelly, and I think a lot of you may have seen that. Saadia was talking about certain things, certain games that ladies were playing. She wasn't limiting it to an ethnicity. And that's okay. Oh, Passport OG, he did contact him. Now, the thing is that he researched one of those fields to see if it would interest him. And he was sure that it was not something he would be able to study for a long time. But we're looking to another field, though. It might still be one that Theo teaches. He has, on the flight, he's going to have plenty of time to research them. Inshallah. Abraxas Grant is on to something here. Abraxas Grant is on to something here. I know about that. Now, I'm not going to say exactly what my dimensions are. Of course, I'm simply saying I know that they will turn around. I know that sister will sit around and assume certain things, and sometimes they'll even lie. Or if they're pleasantly surprised, they'll turn around and hide it from others because then they don't want the competition. Anyway, getting back to Saadia the Psychologist. Saadia the Psychologist can be fairly blunt about what these ladies want in men, but there's something she's missing. Saadia is not hard enough on the ladies in the UK. She's just not. What she does is she sits up and tells the men, well, these are the things that are going through women's heads on the subconscious level and on an evolutionary biological level and then on a conscious level. What she doesn't do is attack their misconceptions. She has said before that it's not nice guys who finish last, it's naive guys. If you have a nice guy that is naive and another nice guy that's not naive, I'm sure the naive guy will get it worse. But what she fails to realize is that in certain cultures or subcultures of the West, being nice means they will then determine that you are naive because they don't want a nice guy. They're looking for brutes. And they will come back to the nice guy when they when they're bloated, look like they swallowed a grenade, and they got other men's kids to raise. Now, the nice guys that are naive are the ones who will fall for that. The nice guys that are not are still nice, but they won't fall for that. But the point is that they put both of them into the same category. Beta bucks. You pay for someone else to play. And that's because you're nice, because I don't want to play with you. She failed to mention that. Now, it may be that she's somewhat unaware of it, but I doubt it. I really doubt that. They're pretty well exposed to the dysfunction of the gynocracy, even in the UK. They know what it is through media, if not firsthand. So she left that part out. She did not want to admit that there are certain things that are flawed in the mate selection process, and she wants to use evolutionary biology to try to justify that. No, you are dealing with hybristophilic B word, Saadia. You, to a certain extent, stated that they can be hypocritical because the women that are the wives that are cheating are talking about how bad the husbands are on whom they're cheating, and they're telling you this. You stated that. But Saadia, the fact remains that this is part of the reason why fathers have to be involved in women's mate selection choices. I'm not even saying that women shouldn't get to choose their own husbands. I'm saying that they should have a choice along with the father. That's what I'm saying. I am stating that she should be able to choose and her dad approves, or her dad chooses and then she approves, but that there needs to be both, because she's simply not going to know how to choose and how to vet. And I don't blame her for that. Walaikum salam, Abdul Malik. I just got through talking about Keke Palmer, the colorist. My God. Somebody's trying to call on Telegram and I'm busy. I don't have time for this. Goodness gracious. You remember when I told you all I only get calls when I'm busy? Y'all remember me telling y'all that? Case in point. I would have never gotten this call on Telegram if I wasn't busy doing this live stream. And the ringing won't stop either. All right, so getting back to Saadia, it is very important that people learn from Saadia when she's confessing, but that you also read between the lines to see what she leaves out, because she's still somewhat leaving out their accountability, and that's not okay. She's also leaving out the toxicity with which they assess men in the West, whereas where they also refuse any input from the dads. Where they have the most toxic assessments of men is the same part of the world where they give the dads the least say-so in vetting the men. Do you think that is a coincidence? When is Saadia going to call that out, considering that she is from Kashmiri Pakistani parents and a culture in which the marriages are arranged, even if hers was not? When is she going to point out that, since she has a view into both? You see, that's why I say we have to read between the lines. And I don't say this with any hatred for Saadia. But I'm saying this because in the end, she's going to have to face certain facts. Number one, she's not doing everything she's supposed to be doing according to what we believe. She thinks that by being somewhat edgy and explaining what goes on in women's minds, she's doing enough. Well, that is a start, yeah, but she still has to understand, men, you're not accountable for this. If you were in an environment where they're doing this and there's no consequence for them doing it, you go where there is a consequence so that they're not incentivized to do these things, because they can't tell the difference between a nice guy and a wimp. To them, nice is naive. Why would you be nice? She even said herself that there are women that are broken, and if you decide to get with these broken women, they're looking at you like, why do you want me? I know I'm broken, so what's wrong with you for loving me? She admitted this. Guess what? She did not say she did not state that collectively in these Western environments, they have agreed to be broken and to come broken and to limit your options so that you don't get to choose the one that's not broken until you leave the paradigm and context of the West to begin with. She mentioned why you shouldn't pick a broken woman, but she did not mention how it is that in the West, they take the ones that are not broken and shame them so that they're silent and so that they hide and so that they don't come out and compete so that you have a better choice to make. Then, because of what she's not telling you that they're doing, later on when you do choose and you tried and it failed and she's leaving and she's taking half and she's taking the kids and you say anything about it, along comes Bonquisha sitting up and saying, you should have chose better. Neither Bonquisha, Boom Shika, Sophista Ratchet Sapphire, Karen, Becky, Amber, or Saadia the Psychologist wants to tell you that the lack of better choices was by design. Don't ask me how I know. Salute to Mr. Kanga. Salute to Lion the MGTOW. Yeah, Tika's right. This here. One, they can understand what a man more broken than them would love them. They can understand that. And then two, yes, and it makes them look better. This is true. This is also the case. These two represent what I call two different types of chameleons. Saadia does not realize that she is one, or maybe she doesn't. I don't know how conscious she is. Melody King has to know, because even if she wasn't aware at the time of what she was doing because she was mad, the fact remains that she can look back on that now. I don't know of any apology she's ever issued for that. That means she is, in fact, aware. She has even said to one of the Wyatt men that called on the show one time, we don't bring peace. She said, women don't bring peace. I don't bring peace, and I'm advocating for you, but I don't bring peace. Why the hell don't you? See, the right thing to do is not just to sit up and explain what it is that these Western niches are doing and what they're limiting you away from, and that to which they're trying to limit you, along with that from which they're trying to limit you, and how they're trying to engineer the environment to be exactly what it is and as bad as it is. It's not just to sit up and explain this. That's not all it takes. That is part of it. It's necessary, but not sufficient. What they are not doing is telling you, you need to, what did I tell you guys to do? Don't be there for Westernisha, whether it's Karen, Becky, Amber, Boom Shika, Bonquisha, Sophista Ratchet Sapphire, or westernized, non-Western origin women like Saadia. You got to not be there for them. If you're stuck in the West, what does that mean? That pretty much means, yeah, you got to stay by yourself, or you at least got to try to get with someone that can't conceive so you don't pass this on to the next generation and there's no one they can take away from you. At least that. That's what it means, because their game is rigged, and they're not going to unrig it. Even the ones that are coming out and telling you what they're doing and what the games are and what the tactics are. Even then, what they're not saying is, listen, well, they don't mind telling you this because they're saying to you, well, you have to weave and bob and avoid this and look for that and look. Well, look, guess what? By the time you start weeding out the ones that are broken, you're down to nobody. And it's not realistic that everybody's going to stay alone their whole lives. I mean, I think men are better at that than women, but what they're pretty much saying is, you don't need to leave the West. Just be more careful here in the West. No, they set it up. You got standards in the West. One, they're going to call you 9AY because you got standards. By the time you eliminate them for reasons comparable to the ones for which they would eliminate you, you're down to nobody because they're all bringing red flags. That's why they don't want to tell you what the solution is. I told you what the solution is religiously. I did, but I also told you practically what it includes, and that is repatriation, you bouncing, not only for that purpose, but that's part of it. I mean, the States sounds like a place you can't live in anyway. I'm sure the UK's no better. Don't get me started on Canada. Everything you earn goes back to some government. Infrastructure is not necessarily that great, but you're paying. Now, if you're paying a heavy taxes to a good infrastructure, it makes sense. But for them, it's like infrastructure is about like the States, but you're paying heavy taxes. What the F for? So what I'm saying is that it sounds like you live in a place that already is unlivable. Unless you got off-grid options, it seems unlivable. Or you got a way to leave at will, independent of anybody else. It seems to me to be unlivable. So that's what I see. It's unlivable. So that's one reason to leave right there. And they want to sit up here and say, well, just avoid these character traits. Newsflash, if the conditions are unlivable and the women already feel entitled, like they own, they are owed, they own you and they are owed everything you have, and they owe nothing, then guess what? Now that's also another reason to leave. You can't have a family. You can't even have a healthy couple there. Because the ones that are healthy are silenced and they are fearful of coming out and saying, listen, gentlemen, I'm here and I'm not going to harm you unduly. I don't want to oppress you. I'm not trying to take away from you what are your rights. And, you know, they come out and say stuff like that. They're offering you a fair deal when they are young and fertile. I don't have to tell you what happens. If Melanie King was younger and childless, and she said what she's saying, she would need security. I've already told y'all that. That's before she got on that dude whose screen name is It's That Bad. His real name is Will, and called him Angry Inch, like Abraxas is talking about. I remember that. I'll never forget that. Can't forget it. So, and this is the other thing too, plausible deniability is something that when you're in the West, you have to take away from them. That's one of the reasons they don't just come outright and approach you when they do want you. You got to make the approach. You got to propose the marriage, but then you're never in control of anything. You got to pay, but you're never in control of anything. The only thing they initiate usually are the ends of relationships and the divorces and problems. They will initiate these things, but they don't initiate relationships or marriages. And they may or may not, once you're married, they may or may not initiate consummating the marriage. A lot of times they won't do that. So you know what? One of the reasons is because they want to keep plausible deniability. Make them understand that it's fine for traditional women. That is not okay for you. You independent boss babe. You're a Western woman, your own woman. You're expensive, but no man ever gets to own you, no matter how much he has to pay for you. You still never owned by anybody. Okay, you know what? You don't get plausible deniability. Since you are looking for this situation that is all your gain and all his loss, you go out there and get your man. No plausible deniability. Don't talk about your woman. It's not your job to approach men. No, your job is to approach a man because of the kind of woman you are and the kind of deal on which you insist. See, if Saadia and Melanie King and other chameleons or just insufficient advocates really want to take it to its just end, that's what they're going to say. And they know Mother Cussword well that even at their ages, with their looks, they would get jumped on for this. And what I'm saying to you is make the Westernisha's nightmare come true. You have already done a pretty good job of making certain corporations' nightmares come true. A lot of you were saying, you know what, I've been working from home. Gas is too expensive. I'm not going to go in every day and fight that traffic. Screw you. You know what? I'll quit. Where's your next check going to come from? Doesn't matter. I'm not going to take your check if I have to spend it all on gas and clothes because you're not covering enough for me to save while going into work every day. Since you ain't paying enough, screw your check. Don't worry about where my next one's coming from. A lot of you have done that. You know what? You got to do the same thing in the dating, marriage market. You got to do the same thing there. And they don't want to tell you that. That's what Saadia keeps leaving out. When she tells you what the games are, believe her. But when she leaves out, or when she says, well, you don't have to go this far. No, shuck that fit. You got to go that far. Leave them. If they want to be with you in the West, let them come and get you and approach you and court you, because they don't want those laws changed at all. And they don't want you to own them, which I don't want either, but they still want you to pay for them like you own them. Buy them, but never say you owe them. Own them, I should say. Do for them, but never say they owe you in exchange. Since that's what they're saying, you know what? You got to say, okay, well, if you're going to offer a deal like that, you come get me. You come approach me. Can't do that? Fuck the shuck up. If I get enough money, I'm out, and this other traditional lady has a shot. And I will approach her, not you. I appreciate you all being patient. It's time for Margaret over here now. I really do appreciate that. And I want to thank the two that came through on the Cash App. A big black bear hug and thank you goes out to Passport OG and Indigo Flow. I mean Blendigo Flow for coming through on this one. Down in my last few hours before we'll have to go to the airport, and I'll have to return a phone call. I can see that it was an important call. It's just the timing was jacked up. I hope that what I said helps you all in real life. Don't worry, Mr. Conga. I will leave this up for a little while at least. Matter of fact, I think it's a good idea to leave this one up permanently because I have something else to put on the Patreon. Actually, Ms. Harding, you know what? I do have PayPal. That's right. Y'all don't have Cash App out there in Canada. It's I'll send you the email to the PayPal. It's coming up. And you know what, Tik, if you're not able to, don't worry about it. I do appreciate the sentiment, though. And also, for those that don't have Cash App, I do take the, excuse me, so I take the digital currencies that I mentioned before as well. But I hope that this helps you all out in your real life. And yeah, Mr. Kanga, I'm still catching up on those emails. Thank you, Tika. I appreciate you, if anything. And Mr. Kanga, I got to go through the emails one by one. But I haven't stopped yet. It just sometimes I got to go through them one at a time based on whatever else is going on. I have to start preparing my students for exams too. The students this semester are going to take a lot of time because I'm telling you, my students last semester, I mean, you had Hood Hassan, you had all sorts of characters in there, and they were pretty good in English. I just had to get them to writing at advanced level, and some of them speaking at advanced level. The students I got now all got jacked up English, all of them. Not every last one of them. There's no exception in the classroom. All of them. They make constant grammatical errors in speaking and writing, no exceptions. And I can't point them to somebody in the class and say, look, learn from him. Nope, all of them are writing without punctuation, misspelling, capitalizing stuff they shouldn't, not capitalizing the beginnings of sentences. The way they write is so bad, you can tell they don't even write in Arabic correctly. It's that bad. So I'm going to be quite occupied because of that. But that's my job. I generally like it, and as long as my administrators don't blame me for their failures, we cool. But yeah, I do want this to help you all out in real life, gentlemen. And I wanted you all to understand too that the fairest thing you can do, because many of you do wonder, how do I be fair to the ladies that aren't a part of the problem, the ladies that do mean well? And the fairest thing that you can do to them is, if they are in a traditional context outside of the West, well, if they're your type, you give them a chance. Preferably marriage. That's what I would want for you anyway. But that's the fairest thing to do to the ones that want to be fair to you. And that's in the traditional context outside of the West. The fairest thing that you can do to the ones that are fair-minded, but they're in the West, is to be gone from them as well, to just be absent. You're not harming them. You're not preaching against them. They didn't do anything, but you're absent. Why? Because they weren't going to come out and compete. We weren't asking them to come out and beat us in a fight. They weren't willing to stand up to the hyenas. So you're absent. That's what you do. That's the fair thing. You don't blame them for anything they didn't do. Tip your hat to them. You greet them peacefully. But you are absent. And you then invite them to leave the West and go to a traditional area and de-Westernized to the extent that they still are Westernized. Because fair intentions can still be muddled or held back by certain elements of Westernization. Now, when it comes down to the ones that mean us harm, I'm with LOM. Screw fair. Fair is you win. The good guy wins, the bad guy loses. That's fair. And we didn't start this gender war. The hyenas did. So for them, whatever causes them to lose and us to win is fair. That's their view anyway. But I do want this to benefit you all in real life. And I'm sorry that I can't make it benefit you all overnight, but I'd like for this to benefit you all in the long run as soon as possible. That being said, thank you all for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum in Black, heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it in Black patriarchy until extinction, the judgment day. Thank you for flying again with us here on Jet Black Airways, where Jet Black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.